How does music, even types you dislike, make wine more enjoyable? Can curated playlists in tasting rooms and wine bars influence how customers eat, drink, and experience wine? And what happens when you stop overthinking wine and music and just enjoy it? In today's episode, you'll hear the stories and tips that answer those questions in part 2 of our chat with Susan Lin, a Master of Wine and Master of Fine Arts in Classical Piano and Musicology. You don't need to have listened to part 1 from last week first, but if you missed it, go back and have a listen after you finish this one. By the end of our conversation, you'll also discover how a low-pitched, slow-tempo musical piece impacts the perceived fruitiness of wine. What timbre, or timbre, I still can't get it straight, means in musical terms. How different musical characteristics influence the perception of wine's effervescence. Whether the participants' music preferences in the study she conducted correlated with their enjoyment of the wine. What might surprise you about how wine tastes in silence. Why the influence of sound on our perception tends to go unnoticed. How some winemakers are using music in their wineries. Retail applications for Susan's research into the influence of music on the perception of wine. Susan's ideal live concert and wine pairing scenario, the possibilities in the future for AI-generated music and wine experiences, similar research on the intersection between dance and wine perception, that really interests me personally, future research areas Susan is considering in terms of wine and music, who Susan would share a bottle of wine with outside the wine industry and why, she's got a really interesting guest, and how you can start being more intentional about exploring sensory experiences with wine and music. Do you have a thirst to learn about wine? Do you love stories about wonderfully obsessive people, hauntingly beautiful places, and amusingly awkward social situations? Well, that's the blend here on the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. I'm your host, Natalie McLean, and each week I share with you unfiltered conversations with celebrities in the wine world, as well as confessions from my own tipsy journey as I write my 3rd book on this subject. I'm so glad you're here. Now pass me that bottle, please, and let's get started. Welcome to episode 347. On City TV's Breakfast Television, I recently talked about how a good glass can elevate the taste of wine or cocktails. The grocery chain Loblaws sponsored this segment directly with the television station, but I was happy to be the wine expert since I'm a firm believer in great glassware. Although the promotion is over in terms of the discount Loblaws is offering on glassware, you can still purchase these glasses from them and other retailers. So with the heat rising, nothing beats a refreshing spritz to cool down and impress your guests. And who better to help us than our favorite drinks expert, Natalie McLean. Welcome, Natalie. Hello, Tim. I'm bubbling over with excitement about these spritzy summer cocktails. So what makes a spritz cocktail so perfect for summer entertaining? Well, I think a spritz is summer's best friend because it's light and refreshing, and the beauty is in its simplicity, usually just 3 or 4 ingredients. Something sparkly, something sweet or bitter, and a splash of soda water. The spritz is the little black dress of cocktails, effortless, chic, and versatile. And why does the right glass matter? Well, we often focus on the drink, but the glass matters just as much, in my opinion. It's like the frame around a beautiful painting. And these Speak Aloud Capri glasses are stunning, lead-free, and they're made from recycled crystal, and they frame your liquid creations. And that's why you will find them in top restaurants and bars. They're also my personal go-to for glassware because I find they balance the right shape with an affordable price. Plus, the bonus is that they're dishwasher safe. So let's get mixing. What's our first spritz creation? So we're going with the Saint Germain spritz. Just add 2 ounces of Saint Germain elderflower liqueur that's made from more than 1,000 hand-picked flowers in the French Alps. That just blows my mind. Then 3 ounces of a top-quality Prosecco like this one from Massi Modello. Then we'll top up the glasses with a great soda water from Fever Tree. Nicely done. Now we garnish And add some mint and cucumber ribbons, and voila, it's like drinking a garden party. Look at how those bubbles rise so elegantly in the glasses. The clarity of the crystal really highlights the cocktail's pale golden hue, and the shape enhances its aromatics. By the way, I'll put links to all these recipes for these cocktails in the show notes. Well, what's our second spritz? We have the Lambrusco spritz. It's made from Lambrusco, an Italian sparkling wine. It's a delicious rebel red among white and rosé bubblies. We combine it with a premium orange liqueur like Cointreau, top it up with some soda water for extra bubbles, and as I said to Tim, you're a pro and I see a future for you behind the bar, or at least in front of one. I add some orange slices, and I absolutely love how we used these Spiegelau Capri water glasses. They accentuated the ruby red tints of the cocktail. It was like a sunset in a glass. Perfect end for a perfect summer evening. Now, what about a non-alcoholic option for designated drivers and those avoiding alcohol? Well, the mocktail spritz proves that you don't need alcohol to create something spectacular. I'm using a premium alcohol-free sparkling wine from St. Regis and pomegranate juice. The key is layering the flavors just like we do with alcoholic cocktails. Then the bubbles add that festive feeling we love. Even in a mocktail, the Spiegelau Capri red glasses elevate the entire experience. The shape carries up all the lovely aromas. It tastes like summer berries dancing on your tongues. Now, wouldn't you want that? Any final tips for home entertainers? Yes, first chill everything. Your glasses, your wines, even your garnishes. Ice is your friend. But use large cubes that won't dilute your drinks quickly. Fresh herbs and citrus peels aren't just garnishes, they're aromatherapy for your cocktails. And here's a pro tip. The 3-2-1 rule works perfectly for spritzes. 3 parts sparkling wine, 2 parts bitter or sweet component, 1 part soda water. Trust me, once you taste cocktails or wine in proper glassware, you will never go back to regular glasses. It's like the difference between watching a movie on your iPhone versus IMAX. Thank you, Natalie. So where can we find you in these cocktails online? Well, on Instagram, I'm at Natalie McLean Wine. Online, my website is nataliemclean.com. Back to today's episode. Although I don't have a trip for 2 to Vienna with orchestra tickets to give away in honor of today's musical guest, I still do have 2 copies of Decanter Magazine's new book, The Ultimate Travel Guide for Wine Lovers, and yes, there are tips on visiting Austria. If you'd like to win a copy, please email me and let me know that you'd like to win. It doesn't matter where you live. I'll choose 2 winners randomly from those who contact me at natalie@nataliemclean.com. In other bookish news, if you're reading the paperback or ebook or listening to the audiobook of my memoir, Wine Witch on Fire, Rising from the Ashes of Divorce, Defamation, and Drinking Too Much, a national bestseller and one of Amazon's best books of the year, I'd love to hear from you at natalie@nataliemclean.com. I'll put a link in the show notes to all retailers worldwide at natalie@nataliemclean.com/347. Okay, on with the show. So on the flip side, I'm not going to pronounce this correctly, but Mazursky or something like that.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I'm not saying it twice. I'm not going to jinx that. Brought out more richness and fruitiness in the wine. Were you surprised that a low-pitched, slow-tempo music had such a powerful impact?
Yeah, thank you for asking about the Mussorgsky. So this piece was written by a Russian composer, very famous, called Pictures at an Exhibition. Perhaps many of our listeners have heard of it. It's absolutely just a very stately piece, a very noble sounding piece. And it is very rich, long sweeping lines of music. And it's layered and complex, but it's all strings and then horns and a very rich timbre, very rich sound. And not fast. It's very paced, just again, very nobly. And the previous studies that for just isolated low pitch, said, okay, yeah, this kind of brought out more of like a perhaps a bitterness like in chocolate or, other types of foods. But in this case, because music is not just one sound or one timbre, one note in isolation, there are so many different things happening that this particular combination of parameters, the smooth articulation, the slow tempo, the low pitch, and the smooth round timbre, rich timbre, really, really prompted them to a perception of the wine as being similarly complex, rich, but the fruity part was the one that surprised me. So this was an interesting finding. It was not something that I had expected from previous data or experiments, but I think it might be because the effervescence perception wasn't as high as some of the other pieces, and we can get into that more in a minute. But I think that part, because it was perceived as less vivacious but more powerful and complex, that the fruitiness actually was able to kind of rise above because the effervescence was actually deemed lower in the wines that were tasted with that music.
That's fascinating. And before we get onto the thing you just mentioned, what is timbre?
Timbre is the way that the particular instrument sounds, right? Or the combination of instruments sound. So for example, like if you take a solo violin and playing very kind of high pitched and maybe it's a very passionate piece, it can be a sharp timbre. If they're bowing strongly on it, it can get like kind of a more percussive sound. So it's kind of sharp. But then like if you take like a trombone, they're not blasting away, but they're playing nice round notes. It's a warmer, rounder timbre. It's like how warm and round does the instrument sound versus sharp and bright.
Huh, that's great. And then how did the music relate to the effervescence? What brought out the effervescence versus putting it to the back kind of thing? What type of music?
So what the data shows is that the more high-pitched and the more sort of percussive or sort of jumpy the articulation was, along with a faster tempo. So the combination really kind of brought out people's perception of effervescence and sort of a vivacious quality in a wine, which is something that, for a Brut non-vintage champagne, being a more youthful and fruitier, expression of champagne is a good thing, right?
Absolutely.
So it was really interesting to see that. But, I had two pieces that shared those attributes, but were hugely different in character. So it was interesting to see how those two played out and how people thought of that. And so one of them was the Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saëns, French composer. It was the finale. And so it's very nice and bright and light. It's exciting, but it's gentle, not super powerful. If you have seen the Disney's Fantasia 2000, the compilation of the Reels, that's the one with the flamingos and the yo-yo.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So it's really cute. It's very cute. Go watch it. So it's jumpy and it's cute and it's like dun 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 dun, right? So it's yeah. So people thought that was like, that was the winner in terms of best sort of wine. Statistically speaking, it was very significant across all the groups with all the data. That was the music that showed the wine best. And then the other piece was by Brahms, Johannes Brahms, a German romantic composer in the late 1800s, so a little bit before Camille Saint-Saëns. And it was a violin concerto in the third movement. And it's high-pitched and it's got the, sharp timbre, dynamic articulation, but it's really exciting and it's powerful. It's not calm. It's not gentle. It's exciting and it's powerful. And it has like a lot of richness in the orchestral layers. It's just passionate, extremely passionate piece. It's the piece that I feel like when I'm in a crowd, I'm like, if it's sort of like my Metallica, I'm like, yeah, so, it's riveting. But that was like the second one, the wine that people said, this is this great wine, absolutely great wine was that. But with that combination, they rated the wine much more complex, much more rich, much more powerful. And they described the wine as if it was like more akin to a vintage.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Did you get them also to score the wine out of 100 points at all?
No, besides, all the 1 through 9 on the different sensory characteristics of the wine, like, effervescence, fruitiness, freshness, etc., there was a 1 to 9 on how much do I like this wine. So there was a mirroring rating for the music. One of the things I thought was super interesting was that even when somebody said, they heard the Mussorgsky Pictures at an Exhibition start playing. They're like, da, 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 da. They're like, oh God, I hate this piece. Like, right? That's what they were thinking. This is what they said later. And they were like, oh man. I was like, yeah, I actually really don't like that piece. They scored it low, but still the wine showed pretty well, because the wine that was always consistently the worst, like the least balanced, the least effervescence, and the most bitter, like that was like least fruity, like just bad on like everything, was what blew me away. This I did not expect at all, was the wine that was tasted without music.
Really? They didn't like the silence?
I was blown away by the data. I was like, whoa. Even when they hated, if somebody said, I really didn't like this music, it was a way better wine to them, even with music that they didn't like, purportedly, than without music.
That is interesting. Why do you think that was?
It's so fascinating. I mean, each study begets questions, right? And there's so many other follow-up studies that I want to do on a larger scale. I've done lots of smaller experiments through projects that I worked on, but they don't have the sort of numbers that I could publish along to go with that. But hopefully in the future I will. It's so interesting to me that even the wine experts, we've trained so hard, and you know this, to assess a wine seriously and to be able to isolate the elements, et cetera. And so I don't want anything to distract you. And so our wine experts were saying, God, I don't want music at all when I'm studying and I'm tasting wines. Like, I don't want to be distracted. Music is not a good thing. But even for them, the wines were much more palatable, and through their sensory characteristics ratings and through how much they liked the wine, showed much better than when tasted in silence. And as for the reasons, I mean, it's really a good question. We don't have like the data on that per se. However, I have some thoughts. When we live, we're just going through life, and there's multiple stimuli happening around us. And when we eat and when we drink, taste things, there tends to be some sort of at least ambient sound. You're not in a lab-like situation like when you're studying for the Master of Wine exam or something like that. I mean, that's not like normal life. So that might be a part of it.
We just like sensory input. We like to have...
Yeah, perhaps. I think the power of sound could be because, there's a statistic that you might have heard of where like almost more than 70% of our input is visual, if for those of us who have sight. So, hearing perhaps, for those of us who rely more on sight, tends to be a little bit more, you don't notice it more, or the influences of that more. So I think that's why, sound can be a very, very powerful thing.
Wow. Yeah. We take it for granted. And then when it's not there, we notice its absence, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Exactly.
Let's see. So was there one participant comment that really either delighted or surprised you?
Besides the one with the Master of Wine who knew it was Veuve Clicquot. That was pretty amazing. There were so many. I loved them all. But one of them was saying, I could not separate them. The music affected everything. Everything that I did, I could not separate the music from the wine or the wine from the music. It was complete. Like, this comment was almost like, this person said this in kind of shock.
Wow.
Yeah.
And there's your thesis. Proven. Let's just see here. So you've already said the wine professionals and the non-professionals still converged on their results generally, right?
Yeah. And so I actually, for the wine experts and non-experts, it was really interesting. Like, even again, despite the fact that the experts really were like, we don't want music while we're tasting, I actually isolated data just to look for statistical significance within each group, within each demographic group. And it was pretty comparable. I was astonished to see that. And then, of course, I ran the numbers across all participants again as well. And I actually did something similar for the demographics. Also, were pretty much, again, I was lucky that was pretty much evenly split between people who had studied music and people who hadn't. About people who loved classical music, there were people who hated classical music. I had one participant tell me afterwards that he only really listened to hip hop, but he was astounded. He said, I am amazed by how well you paired the music with these wines. The music fit these wines so well. And I was like, whoa. Yeah, so it's mind-blowing to me. And I just love the fact that, each person came away with their own experience. And that is what I love about doing events and putting together experiences, because each experience that I create is going to be custom to whoever I'm working with and what the experience we want with the guests and the audience. But everybody came away with something, discovering that, oh, maybe not even just that, well, maybe classical music is, is not so bad. It can be pretty awesome. Because the 4 pieces I chose were really different, really contrasting pieces. And, having their own takeaways on the experience of tasting wine with music. And so, that comment meant a lot to me, because he really said that I loved the way you paired these so perfectly, and I don't even like classical music, and I only listen to hip hop, and this was great.
That's fantastic.
It means a lot to me.
So I can see there'd be lots of commercial potential for your findings. Do you think winemakers could use music in the cellar to influence their blending or barrel tasting decisions to make better wines?
I love that question, because there are a lot of folks who are doing things like this, even in the vineyard, right? Like Chateau Palmer. And
what are they doing? Are they playing music so the vines grow happily?
They love jazz over there. And so they've been playing music in different plots just to get those vines growing. And I have to say that when I was a kid, I planted my first tulip bulbs in my parents' backyard, and I played music for them in the hopes that they would grow, because that was the least viable soil that there ever was. I still like to think that they came up because I played the music, but that has nothing to do with this, of course. But just got to say, in terms of data, the research that I've been doing has been on possible influences of music on the sensory perception of a finished wine. But one of the experiments that I would like to do is to isolate frequencies. So frequencies, not music per se. I mean, music could be a part of it if the winemaker wanted to work with that in a specific way. Could absolutely do that. But one thing I'd love to do is be able to isolate those frequencies and be able to say, okay, so you have these different barrels, right? So if we have one that is being subjected to this kind of frequency or that other kind of frequency and one that isn't, would there be any differences if we can control for their environments and things like that, for all the other variables that are happening, like the barrels are from the same maker and, the same age, et cetera, and all those other things. And even if they have to be apart from each other so that one vibration doesn't get to the other one, are they placed in an area that is the same for all other intents and purposes, right?
Do you have a hypothesis that it would make a difference or wouldn't, or you just don't know?
We don't know, but I think there might be, just because vibrations make a difference. And we've seen those sorts of things in like studies for medicine. Vibrations within the body can, help with certain things or aid in certain things. I don't know enough about it to be able to speak cogently on it at this point, but I know that there are studies about that. And so, I think that, somewhere in the grand cosmos of things, there might be. And there are definitely people who have been playing music, in their cellars, for sure. There are folks in Italy and Germany and all around the world who are doing this, and they feel like it does something for them. And especially if it gives them pleasure while they're tending to their wines, everything's connected, right? It's going to go into it. So
all
in
the
some
energy,
form,
the vibrations. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe not directly in a scientific sense, but, holistically. Yeah.
I can see this as an application in tasting rooms, winery tasting rooms, and I'm sure some wineries are paying attention to this, but do you think that could be elevated? Like there should be specific playlists that you should have for winery tasting rooms that feature big reds versus, I don't know. Can you see retail application like that?
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this study as well and to work in this realm, because I feel like it really does have implications, the trends that we find, right? And I have done and am still working with various folks to not only do on-premise, so I have worked with tasting rooms and wine bars to curate their playlists throughout the day in terms of the experiences that they want their customers to have. This sort of blends into the other research I do, which is a retail atmospherics, which kind of goes into, decibel levels and speed of music that goes into, how people order. Do they order less? Do they eat faster? They drink slower, things like that. So that plays into the data as well for those. And so, if you want to have people to be a little more relaxed in the morning, but then, make your way and start amping it up for the evening, and you want like a nightclub feel at the end, like that's, so I put together complete journey, like day journeys for the types of music, decibel levels, and of course working with the brand itself, so that it's the type of feel and the type of musical genres and the feeling that they want to impart, right? Because that's very important too. But then I also work with brands if they want to highlight, come up with like maybe a feel for their house style in terms of that sort of sonic seasoning, right? That sort of sonic sense, or different expressions for their wines. As you said, for a big, bold red versus for their, light, youthful white, say, right?
Should send people into listening booths inside the winery.
Yeah, silent disco, right? Or just experiencing it all together, right?
The headphones on.
So it's really cool. I'm really encouraged by all the different multisensory experiences that a lot of folks are engaging with, whether it's with music or with artwork or visual art, other things like that in their wine experiences. So it's my like nefarious plan a goal to always bring in music into these scenarios whenever possible. And then for when I'm working with performing arts organizations to bring in wine.
Yeah. You've spoken about working with different brands. Did Veuve Clicquot itself have any reaction to your study?
I kind of wish they had, but so far, no.
They're very guarded, so that doesn't surprise me. But I was just curious. They should invite you over. Host an event for them.
I tried, but it's totally fine. And I'm just happy that they exist so that I could, it was perfect for the study. It really was. And you know what? Back to your asking how many bottles there were, I still don't remember right now, but I do remember that I had one bottle left over that we didn't use. Like I had just one bottle because I bought cases, right? Complete cases, and I had one bottle left over. So everything was pretty well used, but I kept that bottle nicely chilled. And when I got the call from the institute that I had made it and I was named Master of Wine, that was the bottle that I drank that night.
I'll bet.
It was just the Brut non-vintage, but it was the Brut non-vintage.
That must have tasted the best ever of all those Veuve Clicquots you've ever had.
I had spent so much time with it, so it was incredible. It was incredible. That was the one I was just like, oh, you're coming out, buddy.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And do you think, just as everyday drinkers, consumers, do you think we can improve our tasting ability if we play wine at the same time? Or is it just more we're going to enjoy different wines in different ways? Is there a way we can upskill by using music when we're tasting?
I think that's wonderful. We can always take any situation and find something that's interesting that we can learn from, right? So I love that because I often do tell people, just start with something that you like, a piece of music that you like and any wine that you like. Don't worry about trying to pair anything or whatever. Just pick what you like. And then think about what you're feeling. Don't try to do anything specific. Just what happens to just go through your mind, right? Words even. And see how that informs anything that you're used to experiencing in your wine tasting. Is there anything different? If it's a wine that like, is there anything like a new adjective that pops to your mind that you didn't think about before? And that can add a dimension to your experience of that wine and how you might taste in the future. So
your vocabulary and
yeah, exactly.
Because you're primed based on the music. Yeah. So what would be your ideal live concert wine pairing? What would be the musical group or orchestra? What would be the wine and the venue? If you budget's no limit, like what would you set up?
Oh my gosh. Wow, I could probably name 10 different things, but if you had to force me to choose.
Yes, forced choice tier. Forced choice selection.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Like two things are going through my mind, like boom, 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 boom. I'm like trying to choose. Okay. All right. Okay. So it would probably be Maurice Ravel's French Impressionist composer. So his piece Valse, which is one of my favorite pieces of all time. It's a huge work for orchestral work that also has been transcribed to piano. And I have been laboring on this piece for quite a while and hope to have a performance ready soon. But full orchestra, it is a full orchestrated version. It's like all the instruments. It's not a small one. And it's got full percussion and like everything else that comes in. And it is such a beautiful piece that goes through almost every type of mood, from a beautiful, intimate little waltz to like, inferno like type of situation. I mean, complete intoxication and madness. I love it so much. It's all the feels. I would have to come up with a flight of wines for these because there's so much character, so much change in what happens in this tumultuous and beautiful journey of this music that I would literally have to come up with a flight and then like go back and forth on them. Yeah, and also the fun part is that sometimes you can do a contrasting one, like say maybe for this section, this is the wine that was meant for another section, like for a really assertive and loud, bright section versus a quiet, intimate section. Switch the wines and try it, see what happens, things like that. But more than anything else, I would just love to be lost in it and lost in the sensory beauty and richness. There would definitely be a sparkling. There would definitely be a white and a red. So for sure, along that spectrum, there would probably be 2 reds. Yeah.
It's okay. Budget's no issue. Go ahead.
Yeah. One a little lighter and one a little bit more robust. So, or maybe
And
just
where
really
might you host
contrasting
this?
styles.
Oh, that sounds nice. I was thinking that amphitheater that's out in the open air. Was it Pavarotti or the tenors sang? And there were amongst all the columns, the crumbling columns. I don't know if it was in Rome or somewhere. But
thank you for that, because I was just gonna say, yeah, like south of France, open air, like
open air. Open air is good.
Yeah, open air, like it would just be at dusk, and going into night. So like night would be like falling as we go. And then we would be there with our wines, and it would be absolutely amazing.
I love that.
We got to make this happen.
Yes, I know. Got to take a guided tour or something, or at least just go ourselves. That sounds magical. The lights coming through the columns or whatever, the crumbling. Have you ever composed or improvised a piece of music inspired by a wine?
Oh, not specifically, but I should. You know what? I love that. That's a project. Thank you for that great idea. I am now playing jazz more as well. So improvisation is definitely something that I have been trying to work a lot on, but it is informing my classical music playing tremendously. And I actually have been inspired to do a lot more improvisation in the classical style. So I should probably do that.
Well, there, more homework for you, Susan.
Yeah,
I think you're good at homework.
Check back.
And do you think there's a future where we could design AI-generated music for specific wines, or should we just avoid AI-generated music, period?
Oh, there's really interesting stuff happening in the world of AI and music. There are companies like Udio who are, just really doing amazing, amazing work. And I'm really quite fascinated by what's happening there. And I think that, hopefully there's something that we can learn from that as well. And I think it's entirely a possibility. And I think it's fun. But at the same time, I think there is a place always for human, especially live music. I mean, streaming, if you think about it, people used to only be able to hear music live, right? There were no recordings. And then you needed to, get a recording. And now, I mean, everything's just streaming, right? That's a whole other topic. But, there is a magic to live music that will never be replaced.
It's true. Just like dance.
Yeah. But I love the fact that recordings can happen so that it can reach more people in ways that are meaningful. And at the same time, AI could serve that part of that function too. If you don't have the means to be able to create the music, but this technology allows you to in a way that would be great for your wine or whatever. I mean, that could be wonderful as well. I mean, for me, bringing music into the sphere of wine in any way is a win.
Right. I would love to say, hey, Madam A, I won't activate everyone's echo right now, but generate some music that will make my, I don't know, modest sparkling wine taste like Moët Chandon. Take it away.
I love it. Yeah. No, for sure. There's definitely ways to do that. As they continue training the algorithms, I think they could really perhaps do that in the future. So
you're a dancer as well in your background. Are you intrigued at all to study the intersection, or could it be studied, the intersection between dance and wine? Like watching, I don't know, Swan Lake versus Alvin Ailey jazz or something? Does that interest you at all?
It does interest me for sure, because I was exploring this with San Francisco Ballet, in other conversations of doing something like that, just for the experience of it. But of course, in this case, if it was a study, we'd have to kind of remove the music, so it would be really interesting. So if you're looking at just movement based and style, it would be super fascinating. Like, Alvin Ailey's Revelations versus, Swan Lake Parada. Yeah, it would be super interesting for sure. But I think experientially, it's really, really fun idea. And for the experiment, I think, if we do it without music and see where that takes us, and see if that tells us anything, if at all, and then, bring the music back in and have it be sort of like an ancillary part of that, and see if that makes any difference as well, or if it pretty much is still this, it corroborates the data for the sounds music version.
That's true, because people didn't like the silence, but then again, they would have another modal input with the visual, at least without the music. They'd still be watching something. And is there another area of research you want to address next?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's so many experiments I want to do in the same vein, but with different wines. I want to work on a spectrum of different champagnes, different methods of sparkling wine, like not traditional methods of sparkling wine, like Charmat method, everything like that. And to see, if there are any other nuances we can pick up on. But one thing that I would really, really like to look into, and this is something that I've been speaking a little bit with Dr. Laura Catena. She is an incredible human being.
Oh, yeah. In her spare time, she's an emergency room doctor in San Francisco with 4 kids. I mean, she has a schedule that tire a horse, a plow horse.
I don't know how she does it, but here she is. And we've been talking about okay, how do we explore if music can moderate the way that we consume our wine, right? And so that can music be a factor in our consumption? And this dovetails with the retail atmospherics research that I was speaking earlier about, with higher volumes, higher decibel levels, and higher speed, maybe perhaps people eating faster, ordering more, whatever, things like that. But how can music be used in a meaningful way to moderate our consumption as well, our eating and our drinking? That would be huge, not only in feasibility and undertaking, but if done well and done effectively, could have really important implications.
Yeah, the health impact too. Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. We're going to go into just some quick questions and answers, and feel free to pass if any don't occur to you. But in the Museum of Susan Lin, which 3 objects would be on the central display? Things that are meaningful to you. What would we see?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, one would have to be a piano.
Yes, true. It's a big display, so you're allowed the piano. Yes. Is there a brand? I'm just curious.
Steinway. There are many wonderful, wonderful piano brands out there, but Steinway is my baby. I have a Steinway Model M Salon Grand at my home, and
you have 2 pianos.
I have one.
Oh, you have one. Okay,
I have one piano.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I wish I had 2, but no, it wouldn't fit even in my house. But it is the most beautiful. It's a 1976 produced piano,
yeah.
And from the New York factory, and it is my most prized possession. I hesitate to call it possession because it really is my master, and
you are its prized possession.
Exactly. I'm of some kind of acolyte or something that works away at it every day. But yeah,
great.
Yeah. So one would be a Steinway Grand, and then the other would be a beautiful antique Chinese scroll that my grandfather owned. It's kind of in this sort of mini shrine that I have for my grandparents at my house, with things that he brought back. He did a lot of things in life, but he was also a jeweler. In fact, this jade necklace was something that he had created. So it's very special to me. And he went to a lot of places to scope out the raw materials, et cetera. And he did lots of travels, and he would bring back really interesting artifacts. And that scroll is one of those. And so I would love to have that there in memory of him and my family overall, and how grateful I am for everyone in my family, not just my mom's family, but also my dad's family, and sort of a symbol for the extended family of everyone in my life who is so important to me. Yeah. So
that's 2 items. How about a wine? Would there be a wine?
I was going to say, I kind of want to have this be like cheating to put 2 things in one, because it would have to be a bottle of beautiful champagne, but with a potato. Because
with a potato.
Because
okay.
I love potatoes.
You like wow, you really are shabby chic, high low, whatever you want to call it. You like potatoes. Okay. Potatoes in any form?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much, but and great. Champagne and potatoes go really well together.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking potato chips, but
yeah,
I guess
for sure.
Potatoes,
but anything
starchy.
Potatoes.
Yeah.
I mean, the humble potato can be absolutely, elevated into these incredible dishes, right? Like Jean Robuchon type things, So
that is true.
Beautiful scalloped dauphine, all those sort of things. It's just you can go anywhere with that. So
I'm just thinking of this potato sitting on your Steinway, though. That's the visual I've got now. She's got a potato on her Steinway. Well, at least there's champagne on it too. So that's great.
I know I kind of cheated at the end there, but hey.
That's all right. So if you could share a bottle of wine with anyone outside the wine industry, living or dead, who would that be?
Oh, yeah. I think I would have to go with Johannes Brahms, again, the German Romantic composer, because he was a very, very private person. But in his music, you know how much he felt, how emotional he was, and how deeply feeling and conscientious he was. And I just would love to be able to have a conversation with him over perhaps one of his favorite Rieslings from the Mosel and to hear him talk about anything, really, just to learn more about him. Yeah. And so I would have a more understanding of his music, and I would be able to incorporate that into my interpretations of his work.
Lovely. Wow, that's wonderful. This has been great. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to mention as we wrap up?
Wow, we've covered a lot of things. I've loved all of your questions. They're so insightful, and I really, really appreciate your interest in this fascinating subject of,
Well, it is
cross-modal
fascinating.
correspondences and the melding of music and wine and the interactions thereof. There's just so much to learn, and I think if there's anything that I would want to impart to our friends and listeners and community is keep trying things, don't worry about whether it's right or wrong, or, it's just try anything in terms of pairing with music, bringing it into your wine experience, and, just mess around a little bit and see what happens, what flows through your mind, and whether, just enjoy the experience. And sometimes, like all of us, we're always just, like you said, going through life, working so hard and trying to be accurate on everything. Don't worry about any of that and just let everything come in sensorially and enjoy that and embrace the mystery of things. We can't explain everything through data, and that's a good thing.
I love it. I love it. How can people best find you online?
Well, they can find me at Susan R. Lin. That's SUSANRLIN on Instagram, on LinkedIn, X, if anybody's still on there. But I'm not particularly great with social media, to be perfectly honest, but I love to see what everybody's doing out there and to support the community and to share everything that we've been learning. So I always pop on every so often. And if you reach out to me, I will definitely respond to you. And you can find me also at susanrlin.com.
Your website,
You can reach me. There's a contact form there if you want to reach me through mail as well. So yeah, I would love to hear from you. Yeah.
Well, we'll put all those links in the show notes in case people are scrambling to write this down. But Susan, this has been absolutely delightful. Thank you so much for sharing your passion, your research. I love what I learned today. So thank you so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for your enthusiasm for all things wine and life, and for being interested in this. And I enjoyed our conversation so much. Thank you.
Susan. All right. Cheers for now, but I hope we meet in person next time.
Yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay. Bye for now. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Susan. Here are my takeaways. Number 1, how does music, even types you dislike, make wine more enjoyable? Susan says that in her experiments, the wine that was consistently the worst and least balanced was the wine tasted without music. Even for those who said, I really don't like this music, the wine was perceived to be better to them than when tasted in silence. Even for wine experts, the wines were much more palatable with music. And that's why she thinks sound can be a very powerful thing. I find that intriguing. Number 2, can curated playlists in tasting rooms and wine bars influence how consumers drink, eat, and experience wine? I guess you don't eat your wine, but anyway. Susan has worked with tasting rooms and wine bars to curate their playlists in terms of their experiences that they want their customers to have. You want people to be a little more relaxed in the morning, she says, then you start amping it up for the evening. She puts together a complete journey, the sort of sonic seasoning for different expressions of their wines, for big, red, bold wines versus light, youthful whites. And number 3, what happens when you stop overthinking wine and music and just enjoy? Kind of like life itself, I think. Susan says that with the melding of music and wine, there's so much to learn. Keep trying new things. Don't worry about getting it right or wrong. Just enjoy the experience. Let everything come in sensorially and enjoy it and embrace the mystery of things. We can't explain everything through data, and that's a good thing. Amen. In the show notes, you'll find a full transcript of my conversation with Susan, links to her website, the video versions of these conversations on Facebook and YouTube Live, and where you can order my book online now, no matter where you live. If you missed episode 111, go back and take a listen. I chat about ice wine cocktails and pairing them with chili chips. It's divine. I'll share a short clip with you now to whet your appetite.
We decided to pair it again with spicy appetizers, things like tortilla chips or anything that has a little spicy Chilean heat kind of a flavor to it, so that people could taste it and see how it pairs. Because it has a big initial impact of complex fruit, then it goes through that caramelized flavor, and then it gets into its acidity. And usually at the end, there's another kind of fruit note. In this case, it's the orange tangerine grapefruit note. So I'm going to have you taste it straight up first, just so you can notice the last notes. And you really have to pay attention for them.
I'm loving that. I don't think it needs anything, but...
You mean food?
Yeah, no, just pair it with more of this. You won't want to miss next week when we chat with Steve Hoffman, a tax consultant and food writer who has written an award-winning memoir called A Season for That, Lost and Found in the Other Southern France. He'll join us from his home on Turtle Lake. If you liked this episode or learned even one thing from it, please email or tell a friend about the podcast this week, especially someone you know who'd be interested in learning more about the interaction between wine and music. It's easy to find the Unreserved Wine Talk podcast. Just tell them to search for Natalie MacLean Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, their favorite podcast app, or they can listen to my show on my website at nataliemaclean.com/podcast. Email me if you have a sip, tip, question, or if you'd like to win one of 5 copies of the books I have to give away. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode, or if you've read my book or are listening to it. Email me at natalie@nataliemaclean.com. In the show notes, you'll find a link to take a free online food and wine pairing class with me called The 5 Food and Wine Pairing Mistakes That Can Ruin Your Dinner and How to Fix Them Forever at nataliemaclean.com/class. That's all in the show notes at nataliemaclean.com/347. Thank you for taking the time to join me here. I hope something great is in your glass this week. Perhaps a wine that floods your senses and makes you happy. You don't want to miss one juicy episode of this podcast, especially the secret, full-bodied bonus episodes that I don't announce on social media. So, subscribe for free now at nataliemaclean.com/subscribe. Meet me here next week. Cheers.